All right, great. So I'm going to be looking at an introduction to marketing automation. We'll also look at some of the key features of Mautic in particular, and then we'll have some question and answers at the end. I'm sure you'll have questions as we go, so try to keep them to a minimum until we get to the end. That way I can answer them. There is a delay with Hangouts on air, so there is a little bit of a lag between when I'll see the question and when I'll be able to respond to it. We will be recording this session, so if you wanted to return and look at it later, you will be able to do so. All right, so an introduction to marketing automation. And what better way to do an introduction than with an introduction? So I'll talk a bit about me, because everybody loves to hear about me, and then I'll talk about marketing automation, and then last I will talk about Mautic. So my name is David Hurley. I am a coder, an open source speaker, the Joomla community manager, and founder at Mautic. I wear a lot of hats. I'm involved in a lot of things. I particularly love open source. I got my start with Mambo, which was the predecessor to Joomla, and have been working in open source ever since. Absolutely love the concepts and ideas of open source, and saw that there was a need for open source in more areas of business than just in content management system, which is where I had previously spent a lot of my time. I do know code, so I am one of those unusual types that's able to talk intelligently on a code level as well as communicate effectively with people. Well, I like to think I communicate effectively with people. You can tell me later if you think that's not the case. All right, so that's enough about me. Let's look next at what is marketing automation. And if you look around on the web at examples or definitions of marketing automation, you will find a very wide range of answers. And one thing you will notice is none of them are simple. There are a ton of different definitions, and every single one seems to take a paragraph, 2 paragraphs or more to try to explain the concept. And I think this may be one of the reasons why marketing automation is so difficult for businesses to employ. One of the reasons. So anyway, this is a short paragraph of what marketing automation is. It helps you save time by handling repetitive marketing and sales tasks on predefined schedules, and by gathering critical and useful information into a central location to help sales teams focus on the right potential customers and leads at the right time. The bottom line, the simplest distillation of marketing automation is that it's a tool that can save time and increase your sales. Now, there's a variety of ways in which it does this. That's where things begin to get a little bit tricky because every system seems to handle them slightly differently. But the bottom line is that they all want to save you time by doing certain tasks for you automatically, and then by providing you a central space where all of the information is gathered, collected, and displayed. So what is Mautic? Well, Mautic is the only free open source marketing automation. There's nothing else out there that provides the same amount of power and capabilities as Mautic, completely free and completely open source. There's a short list here on the screen: lead nurturing and tracking, marketing campaigns, drip flow programs, landing pages, social media monitoring, emails, forms, assets, reports, so many different things that Mautic is and that provide value in your marketing automation strategy. So it's extremely exciting, it's extremely new, and yet we're growing incredibly fast. So that's a little bit about an introduction. Let's look at some of the key features. And I'll go just through a short list because I don't want to overwhelm you, but I do want to give you an idea of what Mautic and marketing automation provide. And then we can start looking at how you can begin implementing those in your business. The first feature is monitoring. This is usually one of the most well-known features of marketing automation because what it is allowing you to do is to watch and track what visitors to your website do on your website and also what they have done elsewhere. And that I bolded because elsewhere is important. You don't want to know just information about the leads and visitors to your website, but you also want to know kind of what they're doing in other spaces, in particular social media. And so Mautic and marketing automation seek to try to give you insights into those leads and those visitors to your website through monitoring. This is done through tracking pixels, very similar to what you would see with Google Analytics style, things like that. And we'll get into that in more detail later in this section when we look at the specifics of Mautic and setting it up. But monitoring of your leads and of your visitors is one of the key features of marketing automation. The next one we'll look at is lead-specific details. You won't always know who's visiting your site, but you will want to have information about them. So there's two types of visitors. We call them anonymous and known. The anonymous visitor is someone that has visited your site but has not given you any information about themselves. So you don't know anything other than maybe an IP address, which from that you can glean region of the country or world, maybe some browser details, things like that. Very basic stuff that you would be used to seeing in, say, Google Analytics or something. The known visitors, those are the special ones because they have more detail that have either been added automatically or manually. And I say manually added because Mautic lets you have custom fields so that you can track any information you want on your leads. The next thing we'll look at is points. The points are a very, very cool feature of marketing automation. And this is kind of where it starts to come together and most people begin to understand why marketing automation is so powerful and what you can do with it. Points are a way of giving weights to these known visitors or these potential leads. And again, I'll stop real quick and just say that I'm going to be referring to them as leads throughout this entire webinar. If you're in a different vertical market, you may not consider them leads. If you were looking at using Mautic for community management, it may just be volunteers. If you're looking at it from a nonprofit organization, they may be constituents. All sorts of different terminology that you can use. And you can update Mautic so that they will call it what you're familiar with. But for the sake of convenience, I'm going to use leads throughout this webinar. So points give you an opportunity to add weight to leads. Now, let me give you a real quick overview of the entire flow, and then we'll keep going looking at the various key features. If we look at an example situation where we have an anonymous visitor that has come to your website, you don't know anything about them except, like I mentioned, maybe their IP address, their geographical region, and maybe different features about how long they've stayed on the site and things like that. That's great and it's helpful, and you can see what pages are popular and you can see how your site performs from a user perspective, but it doesn't allow you to do anything as far as lead nurturing or generating more sales. That's handled when you have a known visitor, because then what you can do is target them with campaigns, and we'll touch on that in just a second. But points are the way in which you can rank these leads, because eventually the goal is that no longer is the system automated, but they'll have a personal point of contact. But you don't want to waste your time making a point of contact with every single potential visitor to your website. You only want to reach out to those ones that have shown that they are valuable. And they do that by having points associated with them. Now the lead has no idea that they have points. The points is simply a system that's being used by Mautic and your marketing automation tool for you as the site owner to be able to better track your leads or your visitors. So I mentioned briefly campaigns. Campaigns are the workflows that you use to nurture the leads along the sales cycle. And again, I'm referring to leads and sales cycle just as an example. You may not have them nurturing along a sales cycle. You may be simply nurturing them along a contribution path in a community setting, or a different path besides sales. But campaigns can have both timed and triggered events. So if you think about it, what you want to do is you want to define a campaign that is going to, let's say, send an email to them when they sign up for something. And then you want to wait a predetermined time period and then send them another email. Or maybe reach out to them on social media. Or maybe you want to have that campaign not do anything until the lead returns to the website, and maybe visits a specific page. So you can have both timed and triggered events on a campaign. This makes it incredibly powerful and incredibly personable. And that's something that kind of sometimes gets lost when you think of marketing automation. It can be easy to think that it's very sterile, it's very professional, and there's no connection between the business and the lead. But in reality, a campaign that's structured properly can be very personal. You can have very unique criteria in your campaign that triggers only on certain things, which will in return make the lead realize that you have reached out just to them, whether or not that's automated or not. So the key is to think that automation and personal can happen together. So that's what campaigns are. The next piece that we'll look at is the emails. Now, emails are one of the primary communication channels that you will have with your potential leads. Emails are part of your campaign and your drip flows or your workflows. Email has been proven. In fact, I just read something, I think it was yesterday, that talked about how while social media is popular and while there's lots of opportunity on social networks to connect and engage with your user base and your potential leads, nothing has the same return on investment that emails have, even now. So this is an incredibly important part, and I would consider maybe even the primary communication channel that you will have with your potential leads and that you want to structure in your marketing automation tool. Now, a nice feature that you'll find with Mautic is that you can choose what mail service provider you want to use. Because we're open source, because we integrate with so many different options, if you want to use Mandrill, or if you want to use SendGrid, or Amazon AWS, whatever your preference is or who you have service with for your mail send, you can plug in directly to Mautic and use them. In fact, we have integrations written for all of them already available to you. So as the community, we have already identified the key integrations, and those are available immediately, and more will be added all the time. Because if somebody comes up with something in the community and sends in a pull request, then we will have more features in Mautic than ever before. So emails are pretty cool because they allow you to connect with your potential leads, and you will integrate your emails through a campaign so that it's either timed or triggered in how you contact them, and you can choose what mail service provider you use. Next, we want to look at the forms. Now, forms are the primary way you convert an anonymous visitor to a known visitor or a potential lead. So what you're going to have is a form that you can then place on your website, and when a user fills that form out, no longer are they just that IP address. Now you can capture all sorts of information about them. And that's where I have to offer just a little bit of caution. Just because you can collect every field under the sun from your potential leads doesn't mean that you should. You want to ask for enough information so that you can start beginning to build a profile for that lead, but at the same time not require so much information that they don't want to provide it. And that's one of the fundamental exchanges that happen in business is how much do I as a lead provide to a business, and how much do I as a business request from my leads? So you've got to balance that. Now, the beautiful thing is you don't have to do it all in one form. You can have one form that collects some fields and another form somewhere else later on in the campaign or in the sales cycle where you ask for different information. All the while, Mautic is taking all those fields and building that complete user profile for you. So it's pretty powerful. And forms are great, but you have to have some way of displaying them. And that's where landing pages come in. So landing pages, sometimes you'll hear them called squeeze pages. Other times you may hear something like call to action pages. Basically, these are typically things that are going to hold a form, and in return for the user filling out that form, you as the business are going to provide something of value to them. Again, that's that exchange that I was talking about. You want to give them something in return for them giving you information. Now, there is a whole science to landing pages and how you should create them and structure them. And we can go into that in a future webinar. Things like you don't want to have a menu structure so they can leave the page easily. You want to have a singular focus to the page, usually a form, something like that. And you want to clearly define what that proposition is for the user. Why should they give you information and what value does it provide them in return? Those are all the types of things that we'll cover in another webinar, but suffice it to know that most marketing automation tools and Mautic as well provide you with the opportunity to create landing pages. One of the very cool things about Mautic is because it's open source, you can download it and set it up on your server, and you stay in control of all the information, all the data, and all the landing pages on your server. That's pretty cool because if you look at other systems, as far as I know, every other single marketing automation tool requires these landing pages to be on their server. And so now all of a sudden the user is redirected to a page that's not even on the same domain. And while that may not be as important these days because people aren't looking at the domain as much, it still gives just a little hint of mistrust because I'm no longer where I thought I was going to be. I'm no longer on the Mautic website, or I'm no longer on my business website. Now all of a sudden I've been transferred to some other site. And it kind of lets the user know, hey, they're collecting this information for some reason. And it makes them think a little bit more about it. So because Mautic is open source and you can host it on your own servers, and because of the way that we integrate so deeply with most of the well-known CMS systems, it's very easy for your landing pages to exist within your CMS system or even coexist alongside your existing website. Just one more way in which you can provide a little more trust and a little more opportunity with using a tool like Mautic. So we talked about something of value. Usually when we think of something of value, we're going to be looking at assets. Assets are those resources that you're going to provide to your visitor. Some examples would be like a white paper or a video or an infographic, something that gives the user knowledge or value. That's one of the key things you're trying to do throughout your entire marketing automation campaign, is you're trying to give the user a sense of confidence that you know what you're talking about and that you're willing to help them. You're providing things of value to them so that they will want to continue to invest their time with you and give you more information because you'll be able to help them more. So assets are tangible things that the user's going to collect. And you may have in a campaign half dozen different assets that you're providing as you nurture that lead along a sales cycle. So maybe you're going to start very simply with a, hey, welcome to product A, and here's a video. Want to watch the video? Just throw your name and email on this form and watch the video, and you'll learn so much about product A. And then because they filled out that form and they hit that landing page like that, now they have access to that asset and you have a name and email. That name and email can then be associated with all the activity that they have taken already on your site and plugged into a campaign. So now in a week's time, or whatever time you decide, you can email them and say, hey, we know you liked product A and you watched that video around it. We think you might also like this white paper that we constructed that discusses the values of our product A versus the market standard. And so they click the link in the email, it takes them back to a different landing page, and here they have a white paper they can download. Now you've got two options. One, you know who they are. So if you don't want to collect any more information, they can immediately download the asset. Or if you wanted to continue to build the lead profile at this point, you could have a form with a different set of fields on it. Like, hey, enter your name and maybe a phone number if you'd like to get in touch in the future. And so now what they've done is they've given you just one or two little bits of information. In return, they've gotten some pretty valuable assets that are going to help them as they start to make decisions in their business. And you have more ways in which you can reach out to them. And let's not neglect that through this process, you're giving points to them. So let's say that you deem it 5 points if they watch a video, But if they come back and they download that white paper, you want to give them 30 points. Well, let's say that maybe you want to set some sort of trigger at the 50-point mark so that when a user hits 50 points, it moves them in Mautic or in your marketing automation tool to a different track or a different campaign, because now they'd be considered maybe a hot lead or a more interested lead, and you want to nurture them differently. That's where the points come in. The user has no idea, but you have a way in which you can now rate and weight those leads so that you can better nurture them. We'll also look lastly here at reports, because not only do you have to do all these different tools and setups and make sure that it's working correctly, but you need to evaluate. You got to evaluate all the time to make sure that it's actually doing what you expect it to do, and a report will give you that insight. A report will let you know, hey, when you do split landing page tests with A/B testing, which Mautic will allow you to do, you can actually look at a report and say, hey, this landing page did significantly better than this other one. So I'm going to tweak my campaign for the future to only use landing page A. So those types of reports, you can see which assets get downloaded the most. You can see which landing pages are most popular. You can see which pages on your website are most popular. All sorts of reporting, which will provide you insight to make sure that you're moving your marketing automation in the most beneficial way for your business. Okay, so those are the key features primarily of Mautic, but all marketing automation tools will have some of those to one varying degree or another. But let's look real quick at the basic use of Mautic in particular. And we'll look very quickly, high level only, at 5 steps to getting started with Mautic. I told you we're not going to go too deep in this webinar. We want to have lots of time for questions, because what I want to do is introduce the idea of marketing automation, and in particular Mautic, and how you could begin to see it being used in your business or in your community or in your nonprofit organization. So the first thing that you'll want to do is to add a tracking code. You can do this in a couple of ways, either directly adding the HTML to your website or using one of the community created plugins, because the Mautic community has already generated plugins for Joomla and Drupal and WordPress and Typo3, Concrete 5. A lot of the CMS systems have a plugin that you can just install through the admin interface, and it will add this information to your website. You can also, if you have a static content site, or if you use a CMS system that's not yet supported, you can directly add a tracking code. Now, it's a transparent 1-pixel GIF. And here's the URL. You would replace your domain with wherever your Mautic installation is set up. And then the path to Mautic would simply be the path to where you would go if you were trying to log in to Mautic. So for example, if I were to look at the businessa.com and I have Mautic in a Mautic folder, then my URL here would be businessa.com/Mautic, and then the P is just for public, and the mtracking.gif is the actual image name. And again, it's a 1-pixel transparent GIF that's just going to be placed on the bottom of your page, very similar to what you'd expect to see with Google Analytics and things like that. And all it's doing is collecting data about everyone that comes to your site. Because what happens, just to give you a real quick idea, what happens is they come to the website, their browser is going to request all of the stuff that makes up that page. And this transparent GIF is one of the things on that page. So when they request that, then your Mautic installation can then say, okay, who are you? Where are you coming from? Give me your IP address. All the basic, well-known anonymous details that are associated with that browser. Now here is another really nice feature of Mautic. It's open source. You know what data is getting collected. You can look at the source code and you know exactly what fields are getting collected from each of your visitors and then put in your marketing automation tool. On top of that, there's nothing that's going to a third party. Because you're hosting Mautic or you're in control of the Mautic environment, you don't have to worry that, hey, you've outsourced this to some third-party server. They're collecting details on every person that comes to your site and then giving some of that information back to you. That's not very helpful and not very transparent. You have no idea what they're doing on the business side of things that you've secured the service through. What are they doing with that data that they're collecting off of your site visitors? You don't know. So with something like Mautic, where it's open source, it's available to you to put on your own server, it puts you fully in control of the data and the storage of that data. That's pretty cool. So the second thing is collecting lead information. Remember, we're looking at 5 quick steps to get you set up with Mautic and running marketing automation for yourself. The first thing we did is put the tracking pixel. Now we're collecting all sorts of random details on every anonymous visitor that comes to your site. The second thing we're going to do is we want to collect lead information. We want to convert those anonymous visitors to known visitors. And this is where those forms and those landing pages come into play. You're going to use forms and landing pages to collect information and convert them from just an anonymous IP address to a name and an email. Again, I say name and email because usually those are going to be the most common and the most beneficial to you as you're building your marketing automation workflow. So it's simple, right? You can go into Mautic, you can create a form, you can place that form on a landing page, or super cool, you can put that form in your content management system directly. You don't have to even use the landing page features of Mautic. You can use the plugins for the different CMS systems or the raw generated HTML from the form and place it anywhere you want and collect that information and then siphon it right back into your marketing automation tool with Mautic. Okay, we've done 2 steps, we've got 3 more. Number 3, you want to nurture the leads. This is the critical piece. This is where your sales funnel, that idea of taking all your leads from a very generic, anonymous set of leads down to a very specific, weighted number of leads that you know are interested in your services and are ready to buy or ready to invest in you, whatever that might be. That lead nurturing is going to happen through your campaigns and your other points of contact. So you're going to use workflows, your assets, again, those landing pages, to provide value to your leads and to improve that relationship. Because what you want to do is you want to instill confidence and a mastery of a subject material in your potential leads so that they look to you as the source. So when they have questions, they know the first place I'm going to turn is that company because they know what they're doing, because they sent me this information, they have shown me they're knowledgeable on this and the others. And that's what your campaigns and your workflows and giving them white papers and all these different assets, that's what that provides, is it provides value to the relationship. It's nurturing the lead. This may be a very quick process, or it may be a very, very drawn out process. You may have a campaign that runs for 30 days. You may have a campaign that could run for a year. Because the beauty of Mautic and the beauty of these campaigns is because you can have triggered or timed events, the next stage in that campaign can be delayed or paused for a set number of days, weeks, months, years if you wanted to. The whole idea is that you want to do a slow nurturing of the lead. You don't want them to feel overwhelmed, like you're in their face 3 times a day trying to force your services down their throat. No. What you want to do is provide a way for them to get the information they need when they need it, be a help and support to them as they look at the decisions they need to make as a business, so that when they're ready to pull the trigger or make a decision, you come to mind because you've been nurturing them along the way with helpful information. So nurturing your leads is a key part of making sure your marketing automation is successful. What you need to do after you have created your campaigns and you have begun collecting information and you're now turning those from anonymous visitors to known visitors, the next thing you want to do is you want to define your useful point values so that you can properly weight these potential leads. Now, it's important to note here that you should be constantly updating and improving and modifying your point values. Because you may think, hey, if they hit this landing page, they are really close to making a decision, so I want to weight that at a 60-point value. Well, it may be over time you realize that that landing page is not that point where they suddenly are now ready to purchase or ready to invest in you or ready to reach out to you. So you want to make sure that your points are weighted correctly. Because if your points aren't weighted correctly, you're still going to be spinning your wheels and wasting time contacting leads that are not yet ready to be contacted. So by making sure that you integrate points in such a way that they are weighted properly for different activities or events that happen on your site, you will be ready to contact the right lead at the right time. Okay? It's very simple. And lastly, the fifth thing is to define your outcomes and your goals. You want to create the ideal outcome or the goal that you want to achieve for each successfully nurtured lead. And I listed an example here of moving a lead from Mautic to your CRM of choice. And I said of choice because once again, the value of Mautic and open source and the community that's building this product is the fact that you can integrate with whatever CRM you choose. If you want to use Salesforce or Sugar CRM or vTiger or Zoho, whatever your CRM choice should be, then you can integrate that with Mautic. Now, it doesn't have to be a CRM. That does not have to be your outcome or your goal. That's typically just a common one for marketing automation. So because we're going with leads and sales cycles, the natural next step would be a CRM. But obviously there's a bunch of different ways in which you could create an ideal outcome or a goal. So these goals are things that are going to happen at specific point totals. Again, we touched on this very briefly early on, but the whole idea is that you want to nurture your leads along a process, during that process adding points along the way, so that when they have reached a certain point total, you automatically trigger some outcome or goal. You can have it so that when they hit 100 points or 102 points, they automatically are moved into your CRM. Automatically. You don't have to do anything. So then when a salesperson logs into the CRM, now they have a list of leads that are hot leads they know are very interested because they've been nurtured through this entire sales cycle and marketing campaign, and all of the features of marketing automation have been taken place on this lead, and they're ready to purchase. Now they're ready for that point of contact. No longer are you spinning your wheels contacting every single possible person that has visited your site or filled out a single form. Instead, you have a list, a short list in your CRM already of potential leads. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a CRM. You could have an outset or an outcome of a goal that when they hit a certain point total, you want to add them to a specific list that then you can say, hey, thanks for all that you're doing in this community. It's really awesome to see the ways you've stepped up in the forums because we've been kind of keeping an eye on the forum posts that come in, because if you have an integration with, let's say, Discourse and Mautic, now all of a sudden you know not only who that lead is, but how many posts that they've done on a forum, how active they are, things like that. All of a sudden you can manage an entire community of thousands of volunteers very simply because it's all being done automated. And all you have to do is set the point values and set the outcomes that you want to reach when a volunteer or when that user reaches a certain point value. It's quite simple. It's quite powerful. And once you get an idea of how you can implement Mautic and marketing automation into your particular business flow, you'll be amazed with how much simpler and easier it is for you to run business. So I think that's one of the key things that I wanted to mention is Mautic can be extremely flexible because it works how you work. Instead of you having to change your business to fit a particular workflow or a particular environment, Mautic gives you the opportunity to customize it. Use the pieces you want, don't use pieces that you're not interested in, and most importantly, you can expand upon it, you can build upon it. For any devs that are listening, Mautic is built on Symfony, and we use the bundles very, very deeply so that it's very simple to expand the entire capabilities of Mautic simply by creating a new bundle. So any Symfony devs that already know how to build Symfony apps and have created bundles in the past, you create a bundle to add functionality to Mautic, and you can drop it directly into the integrations, and it'll work. That's pretty cool. It's super powerful, and it's super easy. All right, I said super entirely too many times. It's awesome. You should check it out. So I've kind of given you an idea about marketing automation, I talked a little bit about the features of most market automation systems, talked about 5 quick steps to get started with Mautic, and I told you a little about myself, so you a little bit know where I'm coming from and kind of what my role is with Mautic. I'm really excited about this community that's growing at an incredible pace. Would love to see more people get involved with the community, find ways in which they can use Mautic, implement Mautic in their own businesses. But now I'm going to open it up. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Again, with this Hangouts on Air, we are on a delay. So I know you'll probably be 60 seconds, I think it is, before your question will post, and then I'll respond as quickly as I can. So I'll leave it dead air for just a couple minutes here, and if any questions come in, I'd be happy to answer them. So I've got a question of, is anyone using Mautic now, testing it out with their business? Any case study examples you can provide? Yeah, actually quite a few people are using Mautic already. We've been in a public beta phase for about 3 weeks now. And last I checked, about a couple hours ago, we were, I think, let's see here, 800 installations is where we're at right now. So 3 weeks, 800 installations. I'm pretty excited about that. I think that means that's pretty good growth rate that we're on. It's really just been exploding, and it's really coming down to people just need to know that it's out there. As soon as they find out that it's available, it takes off. So that's really where we're at right now, is trying to get more people to realize what's available to them. As far as different environments, I won't mention any names particularly, but there is one large social network organization which is currently demoing us internally for switching over to, as well as a large open source operating system that's possibly interested in looking into using Mautic. There's a couple different big businesses that are temporarily internally testing Mautic for use in a different environment, such as for community management, like I mentioned, keeping track of open source contributors, things like that. So there's different use cases. One use case which I'm kind of excited to see is in the political arena and in the education arena. There's a couple universities that are interested in using Mautic for student matriculation and keeping track of students that have maybe visited the campus versus just requested information to actually enrolled in a tour, things like that. And then tracking them through their student time past graduation and then on to alumni. Pretty cool to see it being used in a totally different setting. Again, has nothing to do with sales and nothing to do with a product necessarily in the sense of a something tangible that you would buy off the shelf. But that gives you an idea maybe of something else where it's being used. If we have time here at the end and no one's bored to tears, I can certainly do some tour of the UI. I think the UI is beautiful. We've gotten lots of great reviews on the UI. We've really tried to make sure that it's simple and yet powerful. It has to be clean. It has to be very easy and intuitive so that the first time you step into it, you can just use it immediately. So we've worked really hard to make that UI something that's just spectacular. And so, yeah, if we've got some time here at the end, certainly happy to pull up a demo and kind of walk through it. You're more than welcome to do so yourself, of course. You can download it, mautic.org, or you can sign up for a free account on mautic.com. Let's see here. Next question, is there an ideal business model or category that Mautic is best used for? Nonprofit, digital products like software, hard products? It's a great question. I think I've kind of touched on it just a little bit previously. I see it being used. We've had people already telling us about how they're using it in different vertical markets. Again, the sales is often what's most thought of with marketing automation, but in reality, there's use case for it across the board. From an education, like I mentioned, to political. So if you're running political campaigns, the best way to know how to get the right donations from the right people are by using a tool like marketing automation to help you track who's responding, who's interested, who's reading your emails that you send out, who's reading that newsletter, things like that. That's a huge tool for those political campaigns to use. Obviously, community management's a big one. We've seen everything across the board from closed source, massive corporations interested in using Mautic for handling product sales, to large nonprofits using it purely from an open source standpoint. It can be done across the board, digital products, hard products. So if you have a mom and pop shop that you're selling things in a brick and mortar location, you can still use marketing automation because you can still track things. And the cool thing there, and that's one of the things that we were looking at, was where do we want to go with Mautic? And the cool thing is that you can make it so that, you know what, it doesn't have to be just stuff that's handled online. You can take this marketing automation, you can use Mautic in an offline environment. And that's where it gets pretty cool. And I won't go into it right now because that's an entirely different webinar altogether. But there are some really cool ways in which you can use Mautic outside of a web browser and outside of your internet world and apply it and use it in a real life setting within stores. And it's just super cool. Next question. Thanks, John, by the way, asking all sorts of questions. I'll call you out on it. I appreciate it. Gives me something to talk about. Can Mautic track on an individual personal level when individuals are moving from desktop IP to mobile device? And if not, can Mautic identify individuals from a mobile device? Is that by IP address as well? So initially, we're doing everything off of IP. Because what we're doing is going with the minimal viable product that not only looks amazing, but functions amazing and can handle most of the tasks of these current existing conglomerates that are out there in a closed source world. We obviously have to be able to compete with them, and Mautic as an open source alternative has to provide as many of those features as possible. So what we've had to do is had to weigh what features we're going to include by default when we launch and what ones we want to add in the future. We've got all sorts of ideas for ways in which we can grow Mautic in the future, and hopefully as we get more people involved in the community that have different skill sets, we'll be able to expand on this. But we want to do things so that you can track things on mobile versus desktop versus wearables, so that if you have a watch that's keeping track of where you are geographically, all of a sudden that information is getting transmitted back to their user profile. So I hinted at it a bit ago with brick and mortar stores, but if you think about it, if you're familiar with beacon technology, that sends out a low power Bluetooth signal to within range of the device. So if someone has a beacon technology set up in their store and you're wearing a watch that will get notifications when they enter the store, then you're able to track, hey, that person just came into the store, and update their lead profile. And that is where it gets incredibly awesome, because now all of a sudden you know, hey, this guy has come into the store 3 times in the last week. He's interested in this product. He's interested in that product. And then you can send out a newsletter in a month that says, hey, we know you love that stuff. Here's another one. So initially here, IP address is the main thing, cookie-based settings, things like that. Obviously, once they have authenticated on a device, and by authenticated I mean fill out a form, so now you have say an email or a name, then you know that device is associated with that user, and it tracks across all devices. So we're right around the 44-minute mark, 45 minutes. I think that seems like a really nice webinar length. We don't go too long. Respect your time. Really appreciate you coming and listening, learning more about marketing automation. I hope it's something that you see value in and ways in which you can use it to enhance your business, as well as hopefully seeing something that's pretty awesome that you'll want to share with somebody else. Because like I mentioned, with an open source free tool like Mautic, we want people to know about it. We want people to download it and use it and say, hey, you know what? Things can be better. Things can be different. Open source is the future. And now we have an option. Now we have something we can use that doesn't cost us a ridiculous amount of money every month, that we can build directly into our business, that we can host on our own servers. It gives the user control. And that's what we're about. We're about equality. We're about transparency and openness. And so with something like Mautic, we want people to know about it, to know that the option's available, to look at it, to explore it and see if it's right for their business. Again, I'll mention the links one more time. You can go to mautic.org and you can download it directly. You can put in a name and email if you want and hit download, or you can just download it. And you can also set up a free demo account or leave it open forever. Those accounts are never shut down on Mautic.com. Thanks to Ally, they're providing that service for us. So Mautic.com lets you create an account instantly. And try Mautic out today. And even better, tell everybody you know about Mautic so that they can try it out for them. If you have other questions, feel free to post it in the community forums on Mautic.org. And we'll definitely want to answer any questions that you have. There's also a Slack chat that everybody's involved in, and if you have a Mautic.org community email account, which you can get by registering on the community, then you can log in to our Slack account and talk live with everybody. Would love to see you around. If you have questions, be sure to ask them. And thanks again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and appreciate you tuning in for this webinar.